A few weeks ago, I spent over an hour auditing a founder of a business already doing seven figures a month, and he told me he strongly believes that he's only about 2 to 3 years away from reaching eight figures a month. Most people would assume, watching this, that level scale has absolutely everything figured out. That level business owner has everything figured out. But you know what? You could be actually wrong. When I start digging inside of the business, I found some of the biggest bottlenecks I have ever seen. For example, a company almost entirely depends on referrals, like 90% referrals. A founder is closing most of the sales himself. A sales team struggling to actually convert. Knowledge trapped inside of one person's head and nobody else can actually access it. And systems that simply won't support the next level of growth. Here's what most founders don't really understand. Revenue is really deceiving. It hides a lot of problems. A business can generate millions every single month and still be built on foundation that won't survive the next stage of growth. And here is the scary part. These aren't problems unique to a seven-figure a month business. They are the exact same mistakes keeping businesses at 20, 50, and even 100K months. The only difference is this. At this level, every mistake costs hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions of dollars. So within this video, I'm going to take you inside this business, show you exactly how I diagnose the companies, identify hidden bottlenecks, and explain what it would actually take for this business to reach eight figures a month. Because once you learn how to diagnose business like system engineer, you will never look at growth the same way again, and you will exactly know what needs to happen in any company, also including your company, how to actually grow the company, how to solve the bottlenecks, and how to understand growth like nobody else. Okay, the first thing that I want to do, I want to walk you through the call itself. I took a lot of notes on the call. I want to walk you through the call itself, the notes I took. Then we're going to move into diagnosis of the business itself. I'm going to show you everything that I saw on the call. I'm going to show you the CEO audit framework, how to audit any business. We're going to look at different sections of the business. We're going to look at different layers of the business. We're going to look at demand, we're going to look at conversion, we're going to also look at fulfillment, we're going to look at leadership, decision making. We're going to look absolutely through everything. Now, one thing that you need to really understand, this business owner that I had an actual call, well over 60 minutes call, he is sitting somewhere near eight figures a month. So that means potentially sitting somewhere 5 to 10, almost 10 million a month, right? He's not near 10 million a month now, but he said in the next year he should be making eight figures a month. Now, when you look at the revenue itself, and somebody says, hey, I'm well over seven figures a month, so saying maybe 5 million, 6 million a month, you immediately assume that that business knows what they're doing. But sometimes the revenue could be a really deceiving number just to look at. Because when you get behind the scenes, you start to see a lot of flaws inside of the business, right? Especially when somebody is actually planning to sell the business. There's a lot of factors that go into building a company that can actually be sellable, right? And so in today's video, I actually want to walk you through absolutely everything. I want to show you the notes that I took down. I want to also walk you through different CEO audit frameworks when we look at different businesses. I want to show you the infrastructure, and I want to most importantly show you what inside like a 7 to 8 figure a month business really looks like, right? So let's start from the beginning. So the founder itself from the beginning is the majority deal closer. He closes about 80 to 90% of actual deals. The biggest bottleneck is with sales process. The co-founder has only 3% closing rate and the team has only 10% closing rate. The most sales are closed by the founder. Okay, this is a huge bottleneck, which means that if eventually you want to buy a business and you look at this business as buying it as an actual asset, you can already see the first challenges. The first challenge is that the founder is actually closing most of the deals. So there's not a dialed in system for the actual sales process because the founder is taking the sales process over, okay? Also, the biggest one is bottleneck with a lot of follow-ups and closing sales. So a lot of bottlenecks in this business is to do around sales and decision making. And one of the biggest things that stood out for me is that even at 7 to 8 figures a month, you are still closing majority of deals because your team are not capable of actually closing. So that means there's a training and system and process issue currently happening inside the business. Because they are weak in follow-ups, that also shows that the sales process is not to a high standard to what he actually needs. He wants 50% of closing happening face to face and another 50% happening virtually over Zoom. Okay, that's not an issue. The issue is mostly that none of the team are currently capable of actually closing, right? Big bottleneck also is that most decisions flow through one person, the founder. So I asked him a simple question. I said, hey, let's say if you hired me tomorrow as COO, Chief Operating Officer, what would I actually see? He said, you would see that most of the decisions are flowing through me, which is a huge bottleneck when you look at a company that you actually want to sell. If you want to offer somebody a company that has everything to do with a founder, then basically what you are doing, you are buying the founder. And that's not an asset, because if a founder is fulfilling roles of marketing, sales, CEO, strategic, HR, hiring, placing, talent, building systems, SOPs and everything, he's mostly doing absolutely everything. So that means he is the main business. He has a really high paying job within his own business, okay? And it's a really big bottleneck when all decisions are flowing through the founder, because that means the business is dependent on the founder himself. And the best gift somebody can give to his own business is to be completely replaceable from the business. That means a business becomes an asset, right? So the teams get confused also when closing, because there are too many products to offer and it's hard to determine which product fits for which client and their pain points. When you have too much of products and you don't focus only on scaling the most profitable product, it really becomes difficult for closing and training your actual sales stuff and training your closers, is because sometimes you look at it and there are so many options available. It's like you get a full menu. And having a menu is really an issue because you don't know what exactly each product can actually solve for which type of client, and what type of client that I currently am speaking to, what type of product will actually fit him, because there are so many to choose from. And when you give a menu, you're also not only confusing your sales team, you're also confusing the actual prospect as well at the same time. Okay. Another big flaw that I saw is most of clients, like 80 or 90%, come from referrals. Referrals are all great. They are mostly I would say, internal sales. So that means somebody actually refers you because you have good results, you're getting good results, they refer you. When we look at the aspect of selling an actual business, it's the most challenging thing to actually have, because nobody's going to buy a business where it's 80 to 90% referrals. Why? Because the referrals have trusted themselves with the founder. So that means the next day, once the business is sold and the founder moves in and the founder removes himself from the business, that means all those referrals that have built trust with the founder also move with the founder. They're not gonna trust somebody new in the company because they don't know them. And so what ends up happening is most of the revenue, once the founder leaves with the founder. And so now the business is stuck, right? And so another big thing is, like, when we look at actual referrals, what you need to understand is you cannot have an aggressive scaling strategy with referrals, because you don't have no predictability of how many referrals are going to come in next month, the next after that month. You have no predictability whatsoever. You cannot measure the marketing. You cannot measure who's talking about your business, who's not talking about your business. So that's the biggest problem currently happening inside the business, okay? So because of that, the business currently has there is value in the business, but nobody will buy a business like that. So what needs to happen, instead of the 80 to 90% of referrals, what we need to understand here is that I need to have a client acquisition engine that consistently brings in clients. And once you have this engine that brings in clients consistently, so that meaning an acquisition channel and an acquisition closing channel process. So that means now the business is gaining value. Another big bottleneck is founder spends 80 hours a week in the business, describing that currently the business is living in chaos, right? He described. The biggest thing is this: the business should grow without the founder being involved inside of the business. The less time the founder's in the business, the more business should actually grow. The more time the founder actually spends in the business, it just shows how much the business is depending on him, okay? He said he doesn't want to switch through too many systems, that he was changing systems and sales structure before and it didn't work, and now he wants to commit to what he has in the business. So he has changed some providers before, he has changed some systems, some sales processes. The team has been consistently changing in and out from different systems. Nothing has actually worked. This is the reason he wants to stick with what he currently has, right? So that shows he has been burnt in the past as well, right? So he believes the biggest bottleneck is follow-up on actual sales, which is true.
biggest. But for me, another big bottleneck is not only the sales process itself, because he's doing the majority of sales, he's doing the majority of follow-ups and everything. It's that most of the decisions are coming to him. That's the biggest problem as well. It's like every time something breaks, he is the solution to the actual problem. Okay, and that is a big red flag when you're looking at evaluation of a company, when you're looking to actually sell a company. Okay, so he wants to get to 8 figures a month. He believes he can get there by having sales process dialed in, which is true. You can get there by having the sales process dialed in, but then the question is like, how much of the other parts of the business are depending on the actual founder? Okay, it's really big. He hired lead gen agencies before, but they didn't deliver results. The best clients who get the best results are tech companies and financial firms. His consulting company that have scaling systems. Basically, his consulting company is scaling systems for companies with AI as well. Okay, couple things that I want to mention here. Has a high profitability here. Average of 5 to 7 meetings or so a day. Live hour-long podcast, client implementation, education for our clients, and a few coaching calls, and my own development and cutting-edge AI and math, and obviously build leads and lead my team at the same time, plus coach my co-founder Kyle. So there's too many things, too many activities happening in every single day, which shows that sometimes all of these activities are great because it shows that we are active all the time, but we need to really identify which of the activities are really scaling and growing the business, because sometimes we are just doing things that are actually not growing the business. So we really need to determine which of the activities that we do every single day are actually growing the business. There's an 80-20 rule. 80% of your activities every single day are producing only 20% of results. 20% of your activities are producing 80% of the results. So once we can identify the actual activities that are producing the majority of actual results, we need to dial in on that. Another thing, okay, so he said, it's been hard road, but a good one. Nevertheless, I'm probably 2 to 3 years out from 8 figures a months, right? It could be true that he's maybe 2 to 3 years out, but I feel this. If that system doesn't exist now, it's not probably going to exist in the future. Even if you're trying to dial in, you should already have the systems dialed in before you even try to get to 8 figures a month. You should have the systems and the foundation first, and then only you should be focusing on getting to 8 figures, right? So we can't really put the time frame of 2 to 3 years. That's more like, hey, I'm 2 to 3 years out. What I always will tell you this: if no systems exist in the business that are needed systems in the business, there's no time frame that you can put and say that, hey, in this amount of time I will achieve results, because those systems are now existent. With the systems existent, you can start measuring the results and when you are actually going to get. When you don't have any systems, it's just guessing and hoping that you're probably going to be there in the 2 to 3 years. So also for most business owners that are watching this, you need to understand this. You can only start forecasting for the future once you have all the numbers in front of you. If you don't have them, you are just completely emotionally guessing. So let's now get into the second part of this video. Now I want to talk to you about like inside a 1 million a month business, the CEO audit framework, right? Scaling business to 7 figures a month isn't just about working harder, right? Because even when you look at this business owner himself, it looks like, hey, the harder I work, the harder I will scale, the more farther I will get. It's not necessarily the truth. It's about building systems that can handle the weight of that growth. It's like before you go to the gym and you start lifting heavy weights, you need to build the strength, you need to build the endurance so you can actually handle the weight, handle the heavy weight that you will be lifting. So I want to walk you through and take you behind the scenes of what a 1 million per month operation really looks like, to show you exactly how to diagnose bottlenecks using a CEO audit framework, right? So the CEO audit framework is really simple. We have demand, sales, delivery, and leadership. And every single business that you look at in the world are run through demand, sales, delivery, leadership, and decision making. The CEO audit is systematic review of 3 core pillars of any scale up. So we look at operations, how work gets done, talent, who is doing the work, and economics, the unit profitability of every single action taken inside of the business. When these three are aligned, growth is almost certain. When they aren't aligned, then the business starts to break, okay? So the diagnosis of what I saw when I looked at that specific business, speaking with the business owner, is this. Upon auditing the specific one, like I wouldn't say 1 million because there was way more than 1 million. I would just put it at 7 figures a month business. The symptoms were really clear. There's high team churn, plateaued lead flow, and CEO who was still the primary bottleneck for every major decision. Okay, so because he's the major decision maker inside of the business, that is what currently is limiting the growth for the actual business to even hit the 8 figures a month, right? While the revenue looked great on the paper, right? Talking to somebody that's doing 7 figures a month, we must think like, hey, he knows what he's doing. And yes, there's truth to that as well, that he knows what he's doing, but most of the times we need to look behind the scenes. Does he really know what he's doing? Or is it mostly like he has replaced knowing what he's doing with really hard work? Because yes, you do need hard work, but at certain stages you need to understand what are the leverage points inside of the business that you can leverage in order for you to scale the company much faster by not using only hard work, but by using the right systems, the right people, the right talent, the right process, the right system operational processes. Okay, so I want to walk you through 10 principles. So the principle one is systems over sweat. You cannot brute force your way to 10 million a year or 10 million a month or 10 million a day. Every manual task must be turned into a documented process or an automated actual workflow. Next one, principle two, the talent density rule. This is really important here to understand. If I have 100 B players on the team, my cost for those people is going to be super high. But however, if I have 50, half of that, A players, my cost is going to be much lower, but the efficiency will be much higher. So if you look at this image itself, right? So we have characteristics of B players, which is average skill set, low process, high management overhead, reactive problem solving, and variable results, right? So one A player can replace at the same time 3 plus B players output, right? For an A player, you have exceptional skill set, high process ownership, minimum management need, proactive problem solving, and predictable excellence, right? The total investment of an A player is really low because over long periods of time, they just bring you more profit, more efficiency, more results, more outcome. When you look at total investment with B players, the investment is really high. Yes, you may pay really low price at the start to acquire a B player, right? So let's say I want to get exceptional chief operating officer. He's gonna cost me anywhere between 150 to 250k. Okay, I may get the same one. I may get the same. Let's say I may get one A player, a chief operating officer, or I may get 3 B players. So maybe I can get like a manager, I can get like a director, and then I could also get like a strategy guy, right? And they're all B players. Now, they will have an average skill set, right? Let's just presume they have an average skill set, low process, high management overhead, and they are reacting to all the problems that are happening in the business, and the results really vary. The cost for these 3 players is going to be really low at the start, but it's going to be really high at the long term because there's going to be multiple salaries, tools, and management, and training, and more add-ons. And over the long periods of time, that cost actually adds up. In long periods of time, the A players always are more cost friendly. They're more investment friendly because an A player will always work out in the long term. You may pay premium for him at the start, but over the long periods of time, that premium is well worth it. Then if you hire a B, let's say 3 B players, right? The performance is really low. Maybe they're not at the highest efficiency. You need to train them. You need to get them consistently in the flow. You need to build systems. You need to spend more time, more money on them. And those 3 B players are almost costing you like 3 A players over long periods of time, okay? Because it's not only what they are doing about the performance, is that the opportunities they are missing, things they're not seeing, things that they should be doing but they're not doing, training and everything. It's like too much time consuming, too much opportunities are lost, and it just takes too much of your time and too much of resources, right? So strategic hiring is this: building a team of elite high-value individuals delivers exceptional greater results for less total resources and management overhead. So think about this: how can you get a player that will replace, let's say, 3 to 5 B players, right? That's what you want, because that one player can add you so much things in the business that 5 people, normal average B players, cannot actually do. And forget about C players. So at this level, one high level operator is worth like 5 mediocre employees. You have to prioritize talent density over actual headcount. So it's the same in football, right? You may have one great player that can bring a team forward, or you can have 3, 4 average players, right? They're not going to bring the team forward. It's going to take more training. They're going to get injured faster. They're not looking after themselves much. It's like going to cost you more in the long term, and a lot of games lost, right? But if you buy and if you invest into a player, football player, right? So now you have much more for your actual money. You have much more for the actual mileage as well. You get experience, you get the skill set, somebody can carry forward, they understand the game, they know how to carry, they read the game better, and you can start winning matches as well, okay? So principle number 3 is margin safety. Revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. You probably have heard this as well. That's why I always want to tell you this. When you look at the revenue itself, it could be really deceiving. Because when you see like, hey, this guy is making, I don't know, let's say 10 million a month, it could be really deceiving, because yes, they could have some systems, they could have some things happening, but you could look at it, and most of those businesses are actually referral based, right? And so now they have to work much harder, they have to stretch more, there's not enough systems, too much chaos, everything is just happening. That's a real problem in the business. So don't just look at the actual revenue, look at the profitability. Now, however, for this business owner that I speak, he had great profitability as well. But the profitability wasn't the problem. There was all other systems that were lacking in the business that were the main actual bottlenecks in the business, right? So revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. We audit the unit economics to ensure every new customer adds to the bottom line, not just actual workload, okay? So you want to make sure that every new client you get more out from that one client than just adding more workload on top of you, okay? Principle number 4 is radical transparency. This is really important for a lot of founders that are watching this. Information must flow freely. So that means it shouldn't be living inside of your head. You shouldn't have like, hey, ideas and systems inside of your head and how to do and trying to remember everything and trying to email everything and all the copy and everything. No, you should have that placed, written on the paper, and have systems in place that actually you can start dialing in. So information must flow freely throughout the business. When the team knows the numbers, they can own the outcomes. So that means when you have the numbers, when you have the KPIs, when you have the systems, when you have the processes, now you can also have the ownership for those same processes and the same outcomes that by the accountability. So that meaning you can have one person owning an outcome and you can keep them accountable to that outcome, okay? Principle number 5 is decouple the CEO. Really good one. The business should run better when the CEO is on vacation. If it doesn't, you don't have a business, you have a high paying job, okay? And that's the big problem. Principle number 6 is data-driven decisions. So every founder watching this, if you want to reach, like say 7 figures, 8 figures, and you want to go towards even like 9 figures, data. You just need to make decisions based on the data, what you actually are seeing, okay? So this means principle 6 is data-driven decisions. You have to stop guessing, right? Every change in the business is backed by tracking, by specific KPIs, and by hypothesis, right? So you need to be looking at everything inside of the business. You need to look at actual, if you want to make a decision, you look at the numbers, what the numbers are telling, and only then you make a decision, not based on like, hey, I think this is going to work. I think we're going to be there in the next 2-3 years. I think we're going to be in 4 years. I think this is the right solution. No, numbers. Numbers will tell you the truth. Principle number 7 is feedback loops, which is really important, right? So let's say I make adjustment to something, right? So then I can learn from that adjustment. I can also interact with that. I can optimize my systems. Once I do that, I start to have also actions. So that means implementation, doing the work, applying systems. When I have adjustments made, actions made, I get results. Okay? But everything here, I think I got this wrong a little bit. So everything in here starts with an action. Once you have an action, you get a result. Once you get a result, you can adjust it. Again, you make an action, you get a result, you adjust it. by very long periods of time doing this same loophole, the feedback loop, which means implementation, doing the work, applying the systems, you get outcomes, data collected, measuring and performance. Then we go into the loop of adjustment. So that means we are learning, we are also interacting, we can also optimize, we can measure, we can analyze, we can extract more, we can understand better. By doing that, we take better actions. By better actions, we get better results, and this loop is consistent. And with this consistent loop, we improve over long periods of time. So the faster the feedback loop, the faster the growth actually happens. So weekly audits are like the heartbeat of your operational business. Right? When you weekly audit, when you do weekly reviews, when you have weekly team meetings to understand what has happened in the week and you can get better for the next week, your business gets better by every single week. And it's not only by every single week. Think about where you get in 52 weeks in 1 year. In 52 weeks, you are better 52%. Next year, you are better 104%, right? And it keeps adding on, adding on, adding on, adding on, until nobody can compete with you because you are adjusting, you are getting better, you're taking the right actions, you are getting results, you are adjusting consistently. It's really important. Principle number 8 is simplify to actually scale, right? Complexity is the enemy of execution. When there are too many things to focus, like Steve Jobs said, I could do 100 things a day, but I only choose to do 3. Right? Simplicity is the key to actual growth. So ultimately, you have to cut the products and the processes that don't move the needle. So this goes back to 80-20% rule again, right? So like you have to cut the processes that are not moving the needle inside of the business. So like if you're looking at 20% of activities that you are doing that are only responsible for 20% of the results, you should cut those immediately because you should be focusing on the 20 that are moving the needle, right? So it's like during the day, you could be doing hundreds of thousands of things, but you only need to identify the 3 things that will move the needle forward, okay? Principle number 9, focus on high leverage activities. This is super, super important. And this goes, again, we identify the 20% of activities that drive 80% of revenue and double down on what's working. Principle number 10 is cultural alignment, right? A great system with the wrong people will always fail. So you need to hire for values first and skills second. Super important thing to understand here is this. You may have a great message. You may have a great mission. You may even have a great culture. Let's say you want to hire a really high A player. Like, I mean, the best player you have actually have seen. But the moment you see him, he doesn't have the right core values. He maybe doesn't believe in the mission as well. Don't hire him. Because it's not only about getting a super high performing person. You need somebody that believes in the mission. Somebody that believes in the culture. Somebody that believes and has the same core values. Because that's going to scale the company to the next level. That's what's going to get you growing consistently. When you don't have that, you may get a player, but he doesn't really believe. He's all over. It's going to be really hard to get somebody to buy in the long vision. Okay, let's move on. So the 7-figure. Let's just correct this again. Boom, boom, boom. So the 7-figure a month mark is a milestone, but the CEO audit, which is really important, right? But the CEO audit is the vehicle that gets you there and keeps you there, right? You may get the 7-figure, which is the milestone. You want to get to 7 figures a month. You may want to get to 10 figures a month. You may want to even get 9 figures a year. But what's going to get you there is the CEO audit framework. When you audit your business consistently, when you look at things, when you ask yourself the right questions, that's what's going to get you to the right level of understanding, and that right level of understanding is going to get you to the next level. Usually is that a lot of founders don't have the right understanding of the business. It's because they don't have enough visibility, they don't have enough dashboards, they don't have enough systems and processes, and they don't have enough the right people in the business, right? And that's what usually is kind of giving them the fogginess around decision making, and that's the reason why they're actually held back. Right, let's keep going. So what is a business? Any business. And this is really important for you. Maybe some of the founders over here watching this are going to probably be like, hey, what's that question, right? But let's just break it down. I want to break it down in a different principle, in a different concept. A business is simply a collection of systems. So most of you will say, hey, business is a service, right? We help somebody, we help them to get something. That's a business, right? It's like exchange, right? We exchange value for transitional value, right? But a business is simply a collection of systems. There are only 4 systems inside every business. We have demand, sales, delivery, and leadership. Every problem lives inside of one of these 4 systems. Meaning, let's say you currently have problem with demand. The moment you solve demand, you move on to the next level, right? You get more revenue, you maybe get more money. The next problem is sales. Once you solve the sales problem, now you move on to the next level. So your revenue increases, the business starts growing. Then, once you solve the next bottleneck, you move on to the next level. Then you solve another bottleneck, you move on to the next level. So each level presents a different bottleneck. Each solving of different bottleneck presents you to a new level. So like at every new level, you need to solve the bottleneck, okay? And so once you understand this, the business growth stops being random and it becomes really diagnosable because you'll be diagnosing for actual bottlenecks. Business architecture. Most founders think, right? We look at a converting funnel and we say, hey, we need more leads. We need to get more leads. I would say it's not true because revenue isn't the result of dozens of systems working. Revenue is the result of dozens of systems working together, right? All systems working together. Client acquisition isn't marketing. Marketing is only one component. Sales isn't closing. Closing is only one component. Operations isn't fulfillment. Fulfillment is only one component. Start changing how you think about your actual business. Sales, marketing, everything is part of one system, right? You need to make sure that everything fits in one system and all those systems are working as one. Because if they don't, you have a problem in the business. So why CEOs get paid millions? Most founders solve symptoms. CEOs diagnose systems. That's why consultants get paid hundreds of thousands. Not because they work harder, because they know where to look. It's like a mechanic. You may put new wheels on the car, you may put new tires on the car, you may put new discs on the car, you may change the oil, right? But the car still is not working how it should be working. It's not to its fullest potential. Once you take it to expert mechanic, he automatically looks, boom, he has the solution for you, the answer for you, what exactly is holding the car to performing at the best, right? And so the same for CEOs. And the same you should be inside of your business. You should be looking for things. You should be looking for the bottleneck of what's currently holding the business growing to the next level. Maybe it's optimizing already what you have, dialing it in better, getting it to the T, right? Let's talk about section number 1. Let's just break this down. Demand. When I look at this business specifically, the one that I showed you from the notes, that conversation I had, the first thing that I asked myself was, how many leads do they actually have? It was, where do those leads come from? That's a very different question, right? So like the first thing I asked myself wasn't like, how many leads do they have? It was, where do the leads come from? It's a very different question here. So over 80 to 90% of revenue comes from referrals. Referral businesses feel amazing until referrals actually stop. Referral businesses usually have unpredictable pipeline, no forecasting, inconsistent hiring, and inconsistent cash flow. That's why predictable demand really matters here. Okay. Section number 2. Let's move on to the founder dependency. There are 4 stages of business. Founder does everything. Founder manages people. Founder builds systems. Founder builds leaders. In this company, almost every important decision still flows through the actual founder. What happens when the founder becomes the operating system is that the business loses the actual value itself, because the founder is the system inside of the business. And you can have only one system in the business, because the founder is the one system that does absolutely everything. So that means if you remove the founder, we have no business. Okay. Section number 3 is sales. Sales has 3 components: conversion, process, decision. Now, conversation, process, and decision. Most founders think sales is persuasion. Elite companies know sales is diagnosis. So 3 big things that I saw. Founder closes almost every single deal. Co-founder closes around 3%. He has only 3% closing power. Sales team has around 10% closing rate, right? Is that people's problem or systems problem? Most important to understand, this is a systems problem. It's nothing to do with people. It's to do with systems. When you don't have the right systems inside of the business, what ends up happening is people become the systems. And because people become the systems that don't really, that are living in chaos, those systems are underperforming. Right? You need to have systems, you need to place people in the systems, and then you scale the system. You don't build people as the actual systems. Section number 4 is offer complexity, right? Complexity destroys scalability because there are too many things to focus on. We need to minimize the attention. So every additional offer increases decision fatigue, training time, onboarding, mistakes, positioning, confusion. Their sales team struggles because there are too many products and it's unclear which solution fits which client. Section number 5. Knowledge. Knowledge has 4 stages. Knowledge inside the founder, knowledge documented, knowledge standardized, knowledge automated. The founder himself admitted most of the business still lives inside of his head, which is a huge problem because if nothing is on the paper, if nothing is documented, if nothing is standardized, nothing is automated, we start to have decision fatigue in the business from the founder's perspective because everything lives inside of his head. Why this dramatically lowers the business value is because the founder is the business, okay? Section number 6 is capacity. Every business has capacity. Once demand exceeds capacity, growth actually stops. Not because demand disappears, because systems actually break. The founder is working 80 to 90 hours every week across sales, delivery, leadership, product development, and client work. Can this business double? Not with the founder working twice as many hours, because you can't scale hours. You can only scale systems inside the business. You can't get 48 hours. You can only get 24 hours in a day, okay? The only solution is systems. Section number 7 is predictability. Predictable businesses can actually forecast. Reactive businesses keep guessing. So, I want to explain to you why investors value predictability more than occasional growth, okay? This is the key question that I want to highlight. Nope. Okay, there we go. So, when we're looking to actually acquire a business, we want to look at predictability in that business. I want to look at the profitability that I will be making from that business. It's like you're buying an asset, you want to make sure how much money you'll be making. When you look at predictable revenue, you can see that the business has consistent, predictable income. And that income becomes your asset when we start to look at actual profit margins. But if you say, for example, if you look at it and say, hey, most of our business is on referrals, that means we may look at the revenue being predictable, but then we look at the referrals and we could say, hey, once the founder sells as the business, the referrals also will be sold with the founder, right? So that's not good. If we look at like that every month is different, then we know that there is no stability in the business. If we look that most of the business is people-driven, kind of people-driven sales, that means we don't have no systems, no process in place, so that once you sell your business, the business will disappear overnight, right? So everything depends on predictable systems inside the business at the end of the day. Section 8. What would I do, right? These are some things that I've written down, okay? My priorities would be build predictable demand generation, right? So that means I would run actual ads, install repeatable sales process and playbook, simplify the offer architecture, move founder knowledge into actual documented SOPs, build leadership layer, productize delivery where possible, and create dashboards for every single department. That will automatically build ownership over every single KPI that can be actually measured and improved. This is what I would do. So this now gives you full understanding of where this business is, what is happening with this business. This gives you better understanding of how to audit your own business, how to look at your business. It helps you to understand all the principles. It helps you to understand the players. And most importantly, it gives you insights of, I would just put this as seven-figure a month business, okay? So like this gives you better insights also of inside a 7-figure a month business, okay? And this now helps you to understand what needs to happen inside of your business.
Before you leave, I want to give you something really special. It took me years of failures, mistakes, lessons, client work, and real-world experience to understand what actually builds a successful business. And no, not the theory type, not the social media advice, not some vague advice I got from a book, but the real actual fundamentals. The things that create predictable growth, strong leadership, scalable systems, and long-term success. So I condensed everything into a single scaling actual roadmap. It shows you exactly what to focus on at every stage of growth, so you stop guessing and start building with actual clarity inside of your business. If you want it, click the Instagram link. It's down below in the description, and DM me the word roadmap, and I will send it to you over personally. And remember this, business don't grow because founders work really hard at it or because you have to put in more hours. They grow because founders focus on the right things at the right time, at the right stage. See you in my next video.